Okay, so this is the Delta Conveyance Design Construction Authority, and it is 2 p.m. and we're on our regular board meeting, December 15th, 2022. So as we're here, I would like to call us to order, please.
Gladly. Good afternoon, President Palmer. How are you?
Andy, even though I had to go around the detour and speed a lot getting here. Shh, don't tell the cops.
President Palmer.
Here.
Director Millibar.
Here.
Director Martin.
Present.
Excellent, thank you. Director Atwater.
Present.
Thank you. Director Escamera. Director Chang. Director Anapdawi.
Here.
And on the line, I do want to acknowledge our alternate directors. So I see we have alternate director Tincher, who is going to be filling in for Director Chang today.
Good afternoon.
I do see alternate director Keegan. Will you be filling in for Tony today?
He did not inform me he would need someone to sit in for him, but I
Oh.
will sit in for him until he comes to the meeting. I have read
Here
the.
somewhere. I'm here.
I do
Oh, you-
see Tony now, yes.
Okay, great. Then
Thank
I will
you.
defer to him.
So Director Keegan, I would like to acknowledge you for the record that you are here. Well,
Thank you.
and
Thank
I
you.
also see alternate director Lamoureux and Dan Fleury.
Yes, I'm on.
Mr. Weed. I don't see that he's here. And alternate director Fast. I do see that he's here as well. So thank you.
Yes, I'm here.
All right.
Then if you would join me, please stand for the pledge if you are able. I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Flag of
United
the United States of America, and to the republic
Stands,
for which it
one
stands.
nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, then, hang on, I'm going to the next page. This is the time for public comment. So members of the public may address the authority on matters that are within the authority's jurisdiction, but not on the agenda at this time. Speakers are generally limited to 3 minutes each. However, the chair, moi, may further limit this time when reasonable based on the circumstances. Persons wishing to speak may do so remotely through the electronic meeting link or teleconference number when recognized by the chair. And I don't know if we have anybody from the public here in person, but that's.
Have public participation from the room, and we have not received any public comment requests either.
Approval of the minutes. I have one small change for the October 20th. I believe that I saw that. I only saw it this morning after my second reading. I believe that Director Chang and I were here in person for that October 20th meeting, whereas the other folks were here remotely. So other than that, do we have a motion to approve minutes? Can we do both minutes at the same time?
Yes, we can, President Palmer.
So for October 20th and November 18th, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Okay, a second?
I'll
Okay.
second it. Director Atwater.
Okay, Atwater will second. Okay, then I believe we have to do a roll call since this is a hybrid meeting.
That's correct.
Okay,
President Palmer. Director Millibar.
Aye.
Director Martin.
Aye.
Director Atwater.
Aye.
Director Escamera.
Aye.
And Director Chang is not here, so alternate Director Tincher
Aye.
and Director Anapdawi.
Yes.
Excellent. Minutes are approved.
great. Then let's move on to the consent calendar. And on the consent calendar, we have one item, which is extending the resolution authorizing virtual board and committee meetings pursuant to AB 361. Do I have a motion to approve?
Yes, Anatoly will make a motion.
Okay, second?
Martin, second.
Okay, great. Then please take a roll call on that. Yes.
Director Millibar,
Yes.
Director Martin,
Aye.
Director Atwater,
Aye.
Director Stamera,
Sorry, aye.
Alternate Director Tincher,
Aye.
and Director Adaptawi.
Yes.
Personally, Sacramento, listen up. You ought to make this so that it can just be done and you don't have to approve it all the time because it's a perfectly good way to run a meeting. So all this stuff about going back and forth, excuse me, get real. My opinion. Okay, there we go. Let's move on then to our discussion items. Now we've got, let's see, A through E as discussion items. So let's move on to 7A.
Thank you, President Palmer. I'll start out with our monthly report review. Thank you, Claudia, for pulling it up. If we could go to section 1 for starters. So for the past month, and this is also really reflective of a lot of the work that we're going to be continuing to do in the next month, December, we have continued to wind down fiscal year 21-22. We had a number of task orders, or I should say a few task orders extended past the end of fiscal year June 30. Those task orders have been winding down. They've now reached their completion dates, and we're in the process of taking in final invoices and completing closeout activities. And just as a preview, you will be hearing later in the agenda from our auditors who've done a review of the financials for FY 21-22. At the same time, we've also been continuing our normal processing activities for the current fiscal year 22-23, task orders, amendments, purchase orders, all that continues to move through the control system. At the same time, we continue development of some of our SOPs, as well as kind of looking towards the future in terms of what types of organizational growth activities and transitional activities we want to start positioning for the future. With respect to the administrative activities, really the main push beyond our normal support to DCA Board of Directors and coordination activities would really be about the transition of our video conferencing platform. We've now fully transitioned from RingCentral to Zoom. We're using Zoom for this board meeting for the first time. But overall, that transition has gone very smooth, and appreciate all the activities and effort from the administrative side to make that happen. With respect to engineering activities, we really continue to have the primary focus of supporting DWR, the Delta Conveyance Office of DWR, and their permitting efforts associated with the public draft review of the environmental impact report. We continue to respond to requests from that team for clarifications around any of the quantities or features that we have developed as part of the conceptual design process. At the same time, the engineering team continues to support the ongoing fieldwork activities. And just to kind of shift over to that, to fieldwork, the fieldwork team has completed the fall 2022 program. So that winds down the last program of the current calendar year. And they're now beginning to shift their focus to planning activities for a spring 23 fieldwork program. So while they wind down and kind of wrap up some of the finishing activities for fall, they're at the same time starting to set their sights on the spring program, go through the coordination, permitting, and planning activities all needed for that. So many of these activities are going to be very similar for the next month. So I think it's just a good summary and picture of the focus for the DCA. So Claudia, if we could skip now to the budget summary, please. Please. So here we have our $31.16 million approved budget. This is our fiscal year budget. We have committed almost all of it. So we're sitting now just under 29 million committed, meaning we've issued those in the form of task orders and contracts. At this point, we've incurred to date about 7 million, and we are beginning a process of a more rigorous evaluation of projections and really reviewing our estimate at completions. So I expect by the time we meet again At the planned meeting in February, we'll probably be starting to reflect some changes in the distribution of these funds as we start to reposition funding as necessary for the second half of the fiscal year's scope. Overall, very much on track. Really nothing of any consequence to report. We're on plan, as we have intended for the year. And so Claudia, with that, I'd like to jump to the schedule. I think that reflects it, summarizes it a bit more clearly. So here we have our fiscal year schedule and sort of the context of the overall program sequence. We're approaching the end of the public draft period of the EIR. So looking at the activities identified within the schedule, our program support and administrative activities continue on as a continuum through the fiscal year. The engineering team continues with their permitting support work as well as supplemental information studies to evaluate concepts for future consideration during perhaps subsequent design activities. We've also got, we're starting to conceptualize what we're referring to as project definition reports. So those will be really focused on potential elements of the project that we want to start considering advancing conceptual design. So at this point, it's really just starting to do some planning around that, trying to conceptualize what that will look like. With respect to the field work, which is the block all in green there on the slide, we're very much on track as planned at the beginning of the fiscal year, which is nice to see. We have at this point completed the fall 22 program. So then the active activities would be the planning for spring 23, as I mentioned before, which will be followed by the environmental clearances and monitoring for spring 23, and then the actual execution of the spring 23 field program. Laboratory analysis and documentation is just an ongoing activity. It tends to lag the field work. So it's going to be kind of a continuous process bleeding from this current calendar year's work into the next calendar year. So President Palmer, that completes my summary, but I'll stop here to see if there's any questions.
Do we have any questions from the board? No? Any comments? No. Do we have any public input?
President Palmer, we have not received any requests.
Spotlight for Rod Hauser. Did I say that correctly? Good.
President Palmer, I'll just quickly introduce Rod Hauser. He is our design manager. I think everyone remembers Phil Ryan, who did retire from the program, although we are lucky enough still to have Phil engaged part-time. But now we're here to introduce Rod Hauser. And Rod, with that.
Yep, so my name is Rod Hauser. I'm the new engineering design manager on behalf of DCA, newly hired as of mid-October. And so I've spent the last couple months just getting up to speed on the various moving parts and the team members and continuing to engage in these deep dive sessions on various subjects so that I can hopefully rapidly absorb the information from Phil and many others who've been participating in the project for the last, 4 years. A little bit about my background and experience. Graduated from UC Davis, so just across the pond here. I've been a registered engineer in California since 95. And in my previous position with my last employer, I was the conveyance design lead for the company. And that was an 11-year stint there at Kennedy Jenks. And so I have basically 30 years of professional experience. I've done a handful of things from being a lecturer at the local community college for hydraulics and pump technology. I'm a board certified environmental engineer with some specialty certification in water supply and wastewater. And then I'm a pump systems assessment professional through the Hydraulic Institute. So there's a little bit about my quals. Next slide. Over the last 30 years, I've really worked on dozens of projects, but the three that I'd like to highlight as being pretty complex would be the Kaiser's recharge program for the city of Santa Rosa and the subregional system there. That project has been operating since early 2000s, and it's second largest project in Sonoma County's history at about $250 million. I realize that's a drop in the bucket compared to Delta Conveyance, but for Sonoma County, it was a huge project. And that's 40 miles of pipeline, 5 pump stations, over 600 affected parcels. So in that regard, that's a pretty good similarity to your project or our project. Had to go through condemnation proceedings on several of those parcels. And so I'm acquainted with preparing for those kind of issues. The next and more contemporary project is the Monterey One Water Indirect Potable Reuse Program. So that's a water purification plant that's at the wastewater treatment plant, and go through several purification processes, and then that water is pumped 8 miles to a groundwater injection field. And we have, I think now on the order of 4 deep injection wells with backflush pumps. So medium voltage pumps, similar to what the DCA project uses or will be using. And that project is instrumental at reversing seawater intrusion. And there's a lot of stakeholders involved in that program. And has been running successfully for the last 2 years. And then lastly, San Francisco's West Side Recycled Water Program. So small in terms of flow rate, but a pretty big project in terms of the number of stakeholders and the water conveyance logistics and controls that are baked into that design were designed to accommodate a wide variety of hydraulic requirements and end user design criteria. So these aren't the only 3 projects I've worked on, but these are the 3 Mac Daddies that have really been the capstone of my career so far.
Well, Aqua Region 5, we had a tour of the Monterey One system that was really quite impressive. And
Yeah, it's a really neat project. I'm really proud to have been a key part of that. So really, I'm not going to be doing anything different than what Phil Ryan before me has done. So my title is Engineering Design Manager, and I'll be providing technical management of the DCA's design team. I'll be working closely with the program manager or management team also, and just really to provide some technical leadership and QA/QC consistency with the work that's been done before I got here. And then, of course, supporting the executive director, external communications as needed.
well, welcome aboard. We're glad
Very
to
much.
have you.
I'm really proud to be here.
Questions from the board? No. You
I
guys?
just, Sarah, I didn't raise my hand. I apologize. I just want to welcome
Yeah, I
Rod
can
to the
see you,
team,
Rod.
and we're fortunate to have you. Welcome aboard.
Very good. Thank you, Director Anapelli. Anyone else?
Oh, sorry, did you call me, President Palmer?
No, I just said thank you and I said your name.
Oh,
You did
okay.
it Correctly, yes.
I just wanted to say, welcome aboard. You have an impressive resume. And I'm glad we continue to find really extraordinary people to work on this. So welcome aboard. We look forward to hearing more in the coming years.
Great. Anyone else? No? Okay, well, welcome. We are extremely glad to have you here.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, then let us move on to 7C, which is the Financial Annual Audit Report.
President Palmer, I'll just start this out, introduce Brianne Weiss. She's from KPMG and will be presenting on behalf of KPMG with respect to the FY 21-22 audit results.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I also have Lizelle Malaban on the call, and I'm actually going to ask her to walk through the presentation. But I just wanted to say on behalf of both Lizelle and myself that we're so happy to be here at the end of the road, so to speak, to present the results of our audit. So Lizelle, with that, could you please take us through the presentation?
Thanks, Brianne. Claudia, do you mind moving on to next page, please? Next slide. So we are required by the auditing standards to present the audit results and communicate to the audit committee as it relates to the audit of DCA. I'm going to highlight first the results of our audit. We are expected to issue an unmodified opinion, which is the clean audit opinion on the financial statements of Delta Conveyance Design and Construction, which was presented on a cash basis of accounting. As of today, we don't have like any outstanding matters to communicate. There are no significant unusual transactions noted throughout the audit. We did not identify any uncorrected or corrected audit misstatements, as well as any financial statements or disclosure omissions. So you could say that it's a clean audit. We did not identify any non-GAAP accounting policies and practices that required to be communicated. There were no changes to our risk assessment and planned audit strategy. The significant accounting policies are noted on note 1 of the financial statements. There's no matters to communicate as it relates to the estimates. Significant financial statements disclosure are noted as footnote 2 and footnote 3 on the accompanying financial statements. We did not note any significant related parties, going concerns, or other information that needs to be communicated to the board. Next slide, please. We did not identify any accounting related subsequent events matter. However, footnote 4 includes an additional event as it relates to the draft EIR for public review and comments. We did not identify any illegal acts or fraud. There were no non-compliance with laws and regulations. We did not encounter any significant difficulties with management. We were not aware of like any consultations with other accountants. We did not have any difficulty or other matters that would result to be consulted with auditors. There's no other significant matters to communicate at this point. We also have provided you with the signed engagement letter, and we are expecting to receive the signed management representation letter. This is also to confirm that KPMG is independent as it relates to the Delta Conveyance. Throughout the audit, we also did our required inquiry with management, which is listed on slide 5 as it relates to the matters that's communicated. I think this concludes our presentation. I think we're available now if there are other questions from everyone as it relates to the results of the audit or anything on the financial statements.
Okay, do we have any questions from the board? You can just wave your hand around, I can see you. Nope. Okay, Danny, have any questions from the public?
President Palmer, we have not received any inquiries or requests. My apologies.
Well done, and Ms. Weiss for presenting us with a very clear and concise report.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Then let's move on to item 7D, which is the JPA Amendment number 7.
President Palmer, I'll be presenting the item. So the item before you is a proposed amendment to the Joint Exercise of Powers Agreement, the JEPA with DWR. As the board will remember, the JEPA is the agreement under which we're currently providing DWR for support as it conducts its planning phase for the proposed Delta Conveyance project. The proposed amendment before you is an administrative update to change the repayment date of the DWR initial contribution from January 10th of 2023 to January 10th of 2025. The board will remember that DWR provided some initial funds for the planning phase, and the DCA had previously agreed to repay those. This amendment would simply push that repayment date out, excuse me, for 2 years. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I think we should make an extra note. It's in your report that this doesn't do anything in terms of affecting CEQA or anything else.
That's an excellent point, President Palmer. This amendment is not a project under CEQA, and the resolution that's enclosed would clarify that. Thank you.
Then do we have any questions or comments from the board? Nope. Okay. How about public?
Haven't received any requests.
This is this just doesn't need a vote, does it?
Yes,
Yes, okay,
staff
does,
would
okay.
request to
Do we-
adopt the resolution.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my stuff and you didn't say that. Okay, then do we have a motion? Okay, so moved. Who's gonna second? Come on, guys, snap it up.
Howie will second.
Great, good. Okay, so we have a first and a second. Let's bring it to a vote.
Palmer,
Yes.
Director Millibar,
Aye.
Director Martin,
Aye.
Director Atwater,
Aye.
Director Stamera,
Aye.
Alternate Director Tincher,
Yes.
and Director Anatawi.
Yes.
Excellent. Resolution is passed.
Okay, then let's move on. We are off to the remote meeting update, even though if our legislature would only get together and just decide that, hey, it didn't do anything bad to the Brown Act just to be able to do what we were doing. But hey, they've just got to muck about in that. So we're going to go ahead and continue on with this with the remote meeting update. Go for it. I know this is just my personal comment, guys. Suppose I shouldn't do that, but I will anyway.
Yeah, thanks, President Palmer. I'm gonna introduce this one, but I know Graham and Claudia may want to jump in at times. So we just wanted to kind of take this as an opportunity to update the board about AB 2449 and kind of some plans that staff has for the future of remote meetings, and really looking for board feedback with kind of thoughts on how to move forward. So as we've discussed a number of times at past meetings, AB 2449 was approved by the legislature last year and will take effect starting January 1st, and will change the rules for remote meetings going forward. So under the bill, there are actually 3 different types of remote meetings. The first would be those that are held during a statewide declaration of emergency, or like we're currently using today under AB 361. The challenge there will be, as we're aware, the governor's indicated that the COVID-19 statewide declaration of emergency will likely sunset at the end of February. If that's the case, we will no longer have the ability to do these very flexible remote meetings under those provisions. So in light of that, I think it's important to spend more time focusing on the 2 other types of remote meetings which are permitted under the statute. The first would be those under AB 2449, which allow private remote meetings. So the bill does recognize there may be some situations in which a director is unable to call in from a public location, and allows directors to call in from a private location, which is not listed on the agenda, if they satisfy a just cause or emergency standard. Both of those are defined in the report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I think the big takeaway under AB 2449 for those private meetings is there are some pretty significant practical limitations on using that. The first being that for a single director to call in from a private location, a quorum of the board would need to be in a single physical location. So we would need 4 folks in this room for a single one of you to call in. In addition, there are actually numerical limitations on the number of time an individual director can call in from a private remote location under the bill. And it's basically twice a year. So for those reasons, staff is spending the majority of our time focusing on exploring remote meetings under the third option, which is just the traditional pre-pandemic Brown Act teleconference rules. So the Brown Act has historically allowed and will continue to allow directors to call in from a location that's not this board chambers as long as that location is listed on the agenda and publicly accessible. So we do recognize the flexibility that remote meetings provide, and the fact that, especially given that a number of our directors are, in Southern California or other locations in the state, it may make sense for you to have the flexibility to call in from a remote location. So Claudia has already, done some groundwork, and what we're doing is working with member agencies to potentially have member agency board chambers or other meeting locations at your headquarters or within your jurisdictions as potential satellite locations for our meetings. There may be some, AV and technological issues with that, and so staff's already working to help hopefully address those. So the plan is currently to allow directors to call in from remote locations starting when AB 361 goes away, which, as a reminder, would be March 1st, or for us, likely our April board meeting. As mentioned at the beginning, would appreciate any board feedback or questions on this as we kind of work to implement it. Thank you.
So my going to Egypt doesn't qualify as an emergency thing, right?
So unfortunately, personal travel does not qualify as an emergency. But I think it is a good reminder that under the traditional rules, if you are on vacation and you would like to participate in a meeting, we can actually post the location. We can include that location on the agenda and work with wherever you're staying to post the agenda there. I've worked with other agencies where we've posted, vacations from Hawaii or Mexico or other places. The only thing, of course, is if a member of public shows up in Egypt and wants to talk about DCA business, they have the ability to do so.
Okay, well, they can just hop right on board the boat. We're good to go. Okay, I have another question, and it's maybe silly, but I'm thinking, if we have this thing where we can be remote in terms of a posted place, like a boardroom, that type of a thing, does that qualify as a quorum for somebody who may be coming in privately?
Unfortunately, it does not. AB 24 finds very specific that a quorum needs to be from a single physical location. So we would need 4 folks in this location or some other place.
Silliness involved in how you do these rules. Sorry about that, but seriously, it really is silly. Okay, then that sounds good. So this is an information only, and I think everybody has got a boardroom. I know that my Zone 7 folks are all set up for that, and we're ready to roll. Okay, good. Then let us continue, and thank you. Oh, did we have any questions or comments from the board? I'm looking at your faces. Don't see all your faces. Okay, good. How about from the public?
Requests.
Okay, great. Then let's move on. We are on to staff reports and announcements.
Thanks, President Palmer. So my general counsel's report is in the packet, and I've had so many action items. I think I'm probably good for today. Just wanted to wish everyone, and I hope that everyone has a great holiday season. Thank you.
Okay, treasurer's report. President
Good
Palmer.
morning, Director. This is Katano Kasane, and happy holidays, everybody. I am remote at Cruise event today, so Bernadette Robertson, our controller, is going to present briefly for you, but thank you. Bernadette, go ahead, please, if you're there.
Thank you, Katano. The treasurer's report for the months of October and November 2022. As of September 30, 2022, the ending cash balance was $448,271. During the months of October and November 2022, we have received $3,596,934 from the Delta Conveyance Office, which was used to pay the authority's obligations in the amount of $3,850,590. This leaves us with an ending cash balance as of November 30th of $194,615. As of the same date, we have outstanding receivables from the DCO of $4,175,217, and we also have outstanding obligations of $3,871,172. The treasurer's report is in the packet, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Have any questions from the board? Yes, Director Naftali.
Thank you, President Palmer. Yeah, this is a quick question. It seems like a cash on hand, the cash balance is rather low for the amount coming in and out. I mean, is this a concern, or is this just kind of just the case the past couple of months and it's not usual?
It has been a concern, Director Anaptawi, and we have been working with the DCO to try to raise the advances that we've received. We have received 500,000 from them. And as you can see, we're below 200,000, and we are working to try to get additional funds for that.
And just to add to that answer, the key for us is getting them to pay the receipts sooner than later, because we receive the bills, but we don't pay until they give us money, or sometime because of exactly this issue. So I definitely want to have a conversation with them to see that they reimburse us efficiently.
Thanks for the explanation. I hope they acquiesce and are willing to work with us and you on that, because that seems dangerously slim.
Low.
Margin to
Yep.
work.
President Palmer, if I may also add to the response or to answering Director Anaptawi's question. So yes, we have been keeping an eye on this closely and are also in the process of working through an additional 300,000 in advance payment so that we can increase the total amount of the account from 500,000 to 800,000. So that's in the process, and that will add more buffer to what is being discussed here. So there's been some issues around payment timings and that sort of thing. And the whole intent of this is to add a little more buffer so we aren't getting quite so close on the account.
That be enough buffer then? And will it be in a timely fashion?
Yeah, I think it will be.
Yes, I agree.
Anybody else on the board? Yes, no? Do we have any public comment? I kind of skipped over public comment on general counsel's report. So let me just back up real quick. Did we have anybody for public comment for general counsel's report?
Not have any requests.
Do we have any public comment for the treasurer's report?
Not have any requests, President Palmer.
Okay, well, public, you're just not up with it today. Let's see, now we are moving on to verbal reports. If anybody, does anybody have a verbal report? Board members, do you have verbal reports? No? Well, I just will tell, I always have a verbal report. Okay, so I'm going to say that we've got, I went to the Association of California Water Agencies meeting down in Indian Wells just a couple weeks ago. And some of the things that I was attending, I went to the, I'm a member of, and I attended the Agriculture Committee and also the Water Quality Committee and then the Water Management Committee. Now, interestingly enough, as I was listening to this, there seemed to be ample place for us to say, hey, you know what, really, this is an area that shows that delta conveyance is really necessary, especially as we were talking about Sigma and moving water around and groundwater recharge, that type of a thing. So, I mean, obviously we are doing all we can, but I think we really need to, keep reminding people that this is a really good place to remember that we need the delta conveyance along with the other things, because we need a large portfolio and a broad portfolio, as Governor Newsom has so rightly stated in the past. So also regarding the delta conveyance and things that I was doing, I mentioned this in private to folks, but I talked to some people who were from, north of the Delta, and this is something that is maybe not applicable right now, but maybe in the future, we might want to take a look at making sure that people understand how the management of the Delta conveyance hopefully is not going to be hurting anybody north of the Delta, because that seems to be a big concern of folks up there. And I realize that this is premature in terms of how we're going to address this, because we're just, finishing up the sequel remarks and the draft. But in the future, we might want to think about how we apply that type of information, because I think it becomes very important to the people north of the Delta. Okay, any rate, so that's it for me. Anybody else? Nope. All right, any other future agenda items? Anybody on from the board? You have something that you think would be a future agenda item? Oh, I also wanted to note, alternate director Weed has come on, so if you just make note that he is.
I
there.
did see him.
Okay,
President
good
Palmer.
deal.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Then I believe we are adjourned. Sorry, guys, I like to have a little more fun, but.
Happy holidays, everybody. Merry
Yes.
Christmas.
Merry
Happy
Christmas,
Holidays.
Hanukkah, Wanzaa.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays. Thanks
Take
for
care.
everything, everybody.
See everybody next year.
Guys, wonderful holidays.